Welcome to the FSCA Enforcement Actions Roadshow. This is only our second one after last year's one, following the publication of the Enforcement Actions Report. So today we'll be taking you through the updated one that was published a couple of months ago, covering the period since April last year, 2023, to up until March 2024. My name is Festus Masekwameng from the Communications Department. It's a big privilege and honor to welcome you all and to be the moderator for the session today. It's also the beginning of an important month, Women's Month. So happy Women's Day in advance, and also for the rest of the month. As the rest of you are streaming in and joining the link, I just want to ask that if you may please switch off your mics and also your cameras. We have a presentation to project. It will also be recorded. Remember also to invite your colleagues or share with them also on social media. The hashtag is FSCA Roadshow, or just hashtag FSCA on all our socials. So today we have a rather short program. Before we get into the presentation, we're going to have some opening remarks from the leader of our organization, Commissioner Mr. Unathi Kamlana, and then that will be followed by a presentation by Mr. Gerhard Van Deventer, who's the Divisional Executive for the Enforcement Division. We'll also have some closing remarks from our Deputy Commissioner, Katherine Gibson. So I would implore you to kindly, if you have any questions or comments, make use of the chat group. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the session, so everyone will be given a chance to reflect on this. But I think it's quite an important report to look at the trends, the various interventions that are conducted to make sure that our customers are always protected, and also the role that you play as key individuals in this battle. So a big welcome once again. It's an honor to now introduce to you for our opening remarks our Commissioner of the FSCA, Mr. Unathi Kamlana.
Thank you very much, Festus, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us this morning for this engagement on our enforcement actions report for the 23-24 financial year. The report has really become a very integral part of how we provide a comprehensive account of the enforcement activities of the organization, which of course are targeted at delivering regulatory outcomes. And therefore we also see this report as communicating our assessment of regulatory effectiveness. I think also importantly, it is an important instrument of public accountability. We've said this before. We execute a public mandate, and therefore this is seen in that light as well. As we have indicated, visible enforcement is one of the key pillars of our strategy as a market conduct regulator in the financial sector, and part of that is raising awareness about what regulatory requirements there are, what's changing in terms of that landscape, but also really answering the question of what is expected of licensed entities, licensed persons, and what is the acceptable conduct from the sector. So that's really the story that this report encapsulates. It's about the desired understanding, if you like, of what we are targeting when we take regulatory action against misconduct. We are sending a very clear message about we are sending a very clear message about what we consider as fair treatment of financial customers on one hand, and what behavior is clearly unacceptable and will not be tolerated on the other hand. Because this deterrent effect is really important, because firstly, we have limited resources, so we cannot reach everywhere and cannot attend to every single misconduct. That's the one part why it's important. Because of that, we have to be targeted in our approach. But it also helps to establish a clear and hopefully high standard of compliance and accountability for the sector. So the report is an account of our enforcement activities for the last financial year. One of the things, for example, that it highlights is that we imposed administrative penalties totaling some 943 million rand last year, which is a substantial increase from the 100 million rand that we raised in the previous financial year. But I think it's important to make this point that we've made elsewhere, that administrative penalties or fines, while they are obviously an important tool that we have in our toolkit, they are not the only tool that we use to effect behavioral change to address misconduct. In fact, in many instances, fines are not even the most desirable response, depending, of course, on the nature of the misconduct that we are dealing with. We also focus quite a bit on preventative measures through our ongoing supervisory actions, because really the aim is to detect potential issues early and to prevent non-compliance from occurring in the first place. That's really the importance of our proactive, preemptive, forward-looking, risk-based approach to supervision, that we do these things to prevent misconduct and in that way ensure that customers are treated fairly. And in fact, this is where we apply most of our efforts, most of our resources as an organization are actually expended in ongoing supervision, to build a culture of putting customer interests first, which is a major building block for the kind of strong conduct culture that we want to see across the sector. The consequence of that, of course, if we are successful in doing that, we build trust, which of course the industry itself benefits from. That's the higher level policy objective, if you like. Another strategic thrust which comes through in this report is our collaboration initiatives. Another strategic thrust which comes through in this report is our collaboration initiatives with international and domestic counterparts, which have been really crucial in supporting our enforcement efforts. I think that before I was muted, I was saying that recently we became a signatory to IOSCO's enhanced multilateral memorandum of understanding, which really expands the scope of matters over which we can share information and cooperate with others in our investigations. And colleagues will provide a little bit more detail later about the approximately 45 matters we worked on with our international counterparts over the period. Cooperation, of course, is also important and has been important domestically. We show in the report that some of this collaboration with law enforcement agencies has yielded real positive results, including actual convictions, significant sentences, and penalties for misconduct. So it's really been working very well for us. The report also talks to evolving risks and challenges in the sector. There are several themes that we have identified as areas of heightened risk. These include responsibilities of retirement fund trustees, which of course talk to fiduciary responsibilities for protecting member interests. Also non-compliance with AML CFT requirements, regulatory examination fraud, unregistered business, and the submission of fictitious insurance policies. This is obviously not an exhaustive list, as you can imagine, but each of these areas or themes and the ecosystem around them, they do potentially pose a threat to the integrity of the financial sector, and they require our collective action and attention. And certainly, as the FSCA, we are committed to addressing those issues. I think importantly in that context is the FATF grey listing. So you know that we are still on the FATF grey list. It has become even more crucial in that context to take visible action to ensure compliance with the FIC Act. And we are making very good progress with this in terms of the recommendations pertaining to the work of the FSCA and financial sector regulators. And as you know, the Treasury is providing leadership and coordination of our efforts as a country to get ourselves removed off the grey list. And this focus, of course, is important for the FATF mutual evaluation process, but also it's important for ongoing efforts to enhance the integrity of our financial markets, which is an important part of our mandate as the FSCA. Our enforcement approach also recognizes that an informed customer is the first line of defense against financial misconduct. That's why we've launched initiatives like Warning Wednesdays. The aim there really is to empower customers to make informed decisions. We provide them with information about latest scams, fraudulent activities and trends. All of this is meant to help people stay one step ahead of potential threats to their hard-earned savings. And lastly, there's always a lot to do. There's always a lot of ground to cover. And our approach is to be strategic, to be targeted, and to be impactful. We also intend to utilize data-driven methods to identify and prioritize cases which matter most for market confidence and consumer protection. So let me leave it there for now and hand over to our colleagues who are going to take you through a comprehensive presentation. And I hope that the presentation and the discussions that will follow you will find insightful in terms of understanding our regulatory approach and enforcement strategy. Thank you very much for making the time. Festus, over to you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for those opening remarks. Indeed, colleagues, welcome once again. Quite a lot of work has gone into this report, so I will encourage you, if you haven't done so yet, you can find it on our website, fsca.co.za, and also remember to spread the news on the socials. Our hashtag is FSCA Talks, or hashtag FSCA Roadshow, or hashtag FSCA Enforcement. So without much further ado, I would like to introduce to you Mr. Gerhard Van Deventer, who will be taking us through some of the insights and elaborating further on what the commissioners laid the ground about, going into the details, looking at the trends and some of the data. Remember, feel free to share your comments in the chat box and also any questions so that we'll be able to deal with them at a later stage after the presentation. So over to you, Mr. Gerhard.
Thank you very much, Festus. Thank you, Commissioner. I always appreciate the support I'm getting from the top management at the FSCA. We all realize the importance of enforcement actions. And thank you very much for everybody who made the time to be here today. It is so important for us to get the message out, like the Commissioner mentioned. and it is so important for us, for the industry, to understand why we do things and how we deal with enforcement. It's certainly not a random operation. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to explain to you our thinking around it. And yes, thank you for your support in general. Can you see my slideshow?
Yes, correct.
Oh, thank goodness for that. It's been quite a rough IT morning. I had quite a few IT gentlemen in my office, and I'm very happy to hear that everything is working. So let me start off with a summary of our enforcement interventions. There's, of course, much more on this or on any of these slides in the report itself, and you're always welcome to contact us if you want to know more about a specific aspect. We will be as open as the law allows us to be. We also understand the value of that. So you will notice that during the previous financial year, we ended up with just over 1,500 enforcement interventions. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, it stretches across a whole range of interventions, like the Commissioner mentioned. It's not just about penalties. There are actually more important aspects than penalties. So I will talk to all of these issues, but they are all remedies.
40 million rand.
They are all sanctions that's available in the FSR Act, so they are statutory backed. Okay, so moving on to the investigations itself. The Enforcement Division of the FSCA finalized 418 investigations over the same period. So this ranges from a desktop investigation that might end in a public warning or a referral, right up to complex investigations that takes time, that takes a lot of time, that takes a lot of resources, and where we do not have the expertise, we have a panel of experts that I can draw on, so parts are often outsourced. We have a slight increase in new cases, but it's so slight that I don't believe that's a statistic that speaks to anything. And we finalized slightly less cases. Also, I don't think that's a statistic that speaks to anything. It is important perhaps to mention that my ongoing cases at the moment has increased, and I have 375 open cases. So we have enough to keep us busy. But we do appreciate the importance of the work. Most of our new ongoing and finalized cases, in other words, looking at the entire spread of cases, most of that refers to phase and insurance, and most of that refers to unregistered business. That is our reality, that unregistered phase and insurance business is certainly a place where enforcement spends a lot of time. Very important for us to do this border patrol. Very important for us to make sure that as far as we can, we do not allow our public to be exposed to anybody but our regulated entities. And with every public warning I put out, I always say, you are encouraged, if you are concerned about some offer on social media, you are encouraged to speak to a regulated financial service provider, because that is the comfort that you need to have before you give your money to anybody else. A lot of the unregistered insurance business relates to funeral policies. So you will probably know that we have a unique situation in South Africa, that we have these funeral parlors that plays a very important role in the community, but the way some of them do business by collecting a monthly amount and then providing for a funeral is really a description of insurance business. So we have gone on quite a regularization drive, and we've set up a special team to do that, to get these people into the fold. The funeral parlor project is bigger than that. My Deputy Commissioner, Kathy, Her other departments are also involved in a much bigger project. But from our side, from enforcement side, we find these people, we investigate it, and then we provide the opportunity to regularize through enforceable undertakings that I will speak a little bit more about in a few minutes' time. I just want to mention, for the first time, we have the opportunity to give you comparative figures, which is really nice. It makes more sense. It says more. But in that process, we also realized that we've made a few allocation mistakes the previous year. So there was a restatement of the previous year's statistics. But there you have it on your screen and the report, and you can have a look at that. Moving over to a very specific issue around investigations, and this is the Dayton judgment. So that relates to the Tongaat investigation, market abuse investigation. We've got a specific market abuse team that only deals with market abuse investigations because it's a very specialized field. And in the Dayton matter, we requested Mr. Dayton to please come for an interview under oath. And he refused on the basis that he would want all our documentation before he subjects himself to an interview. You will appreciate how that will make our job impossible. So it was a big issue for us. And Mr. Dayton went to court. And on the 8th of July, 2022, the court said that Mr. Dayton is entitled to all the information. That
Yes.
On the Dayton matter, we then took the matter on appeal to a full bench court of appeal of the High Court. And I'm very happy to say that in February 2024, this year, the court found that there was no basis to insist on access to information during an investigation, especially if all those documents are going to be presented to you in your interview, and that the documents were sensitive whilst there's an ongoing investigation, so it's not a good time then to disclose it. In principle, in law, the finding was a midstream review, referring to an investigation that's in midstream. A midstream review is not permitted unless a grave injustice was demonstrated. We're very happy with that. That provides us with the opportunity to do our job properly. The important part of this case, why I thought I should include it in today's presentation, is I really would like to give the industry the comfort that in the work that we do, of course, there's always pushback, needless to say, for very good reason, but we will not lie down on those. We will take up that fight. We will protect our processes and our powers because we need to do this job properly. I should mention that Mr. Dayton applied for special leave to the Supreme Court of Appeal, to Bloemfontein, for an appeal, and that was dismissed with costs in favor of the FSCA, and is now applied to the Constitutional Court. So this might not be completely over. I'm going to move on to administrative penalties. So you'll see that's quite a large number, just under $1 billion of penalties that was imposed over the last financial year, mostly made up out of Mr. Marcus, the late Mr. Marcus Jooster's penalty. And then there's a few others, as I mentioned there. You also see a significant increase in AML penalties. That's, of course, very important to us. We're all very aware of the grey listing and of the need for us to, as a country, to take AML seriously, and certainly the FSCA is doing its part as far as that is concerned. So you will see a concentration of those penalties if you look at the right-hand side of the screen in market abuse, and that is actually the Jooster penalty. And of course, needless to say, you will also see that concentration in the FASE Act and in the FIC Act. I should just mention, for purposes of completeness, that some penalties have been taken on reconsideration to the Financial Sector Tribunal, and some may still be taken on reconsideration. So we will keep you updated in our reports going forward, but that is the stance as of today. Debarments is the next sanction or tool, like the Commissioner mentioned, that's very important, very valuable to us. And debarment is not so much about penalizing anybody. Debarment is about the FSCA saying, you cannot be exposed to the public. We need to remove you from this industry because you should not be handling people's funds. So that's something that we use quite often. You will appreciate that the enforcement division see the more serious cases. So this debarments is something that we always have in our back pocket. But you will know that there are two types of debarments, that those by the industry and the FSPs. Our FSPs last year debarred over 1,300 representatives. As far as the FSCA is concerned, we debarred a total of 156 persons. And in both cases, FSCA and the industry, these debarments are nearly exclusively focused on dishonesty issues. It is a remedy or a sanction that we use in those cases where there's serious misconduct or dishonesty, loss of funds of investors or clients. Looking at the FSCA debarments, a substantial number of those related to representatives submitting false policies, getting hold of bank account details of persons and then submitting false policies. That is definitely a focus area for the FSCA, and that is definitely a trend that's of concern. And we appreciate the assistance we're getting from the FSPs in this regard. But we encourage you to do more in terms of systems and in terms of investigations to see if we can do something about this issue. Going to move over to suspensions and withdrawals. We issue licenses, so of course we can also suspend and withdraw. You see the statistics on the screen there. We suspended more than 1,000 FSP licenses, but that is approximately 9% of all FSP licenses. So it sounds, the picture is not as grim as it seemed. A lot of these suspensions related to non-submission of statutory returns. So that means the problem is fixable and we can then reinstate the licenses, as we did in the case of 624 cases. Withdrawals, that's the final act. 75 FSP authorizations withdrawn. Some of them has to do with non-compliance, but some of them have to do with serious misconduct. And that is, like in the case of debarment, that's saying to the entity, the license holder, you cannot have an FSCA license. Moving over to enforceable undertakings, this is a very interesting sanction or remedy that we imported from Australia. And in the beginning, I wasn't very excited about this. As an ex-prosecutor and a lawyer, I thought this sounds really strange to do enforcement like that. It has turned out to be a really wonderful tool in the appropriate circumstances. And if I say appropriate circumstances, if there is a case of serious misconduct and dishonesty, of course, an enforceable undertaking is not on the table. Enforceable undertaking really means that you agree with the FSCA that you will take certain steps, maybe including paying back clients, and that is then enforceable if you do not do it. We often couple that with a penalty as well. So it's a well-used sanction for the FSCA, and the reason for that and for the increase in it from 2 to 41 relates back to the funeral parlour business that I spoke about already. As part of that regularization, this enforceable undertaking is a very valuable tool as a first round. Of course, if you persist in your behavior, then it becomes not an option anymore, but it does help me and the FSCA to be more effective with our resources because you avoid a long investigation. Moving over to public warnings, we've issued a total of 104 public warnings during the last financial year. These are cases where we come across clear issues that create harm or the potential of harm for the public. And we then put out a public warning. So this is by no means a complete list of all the scams out there. I think you will all agree. If I try to sell that to you, I won't get far. There are so many scams out there, and our public warnings is just part of the effort to educate the public and to teach them to be a bit more careful with their money. As my commissioner mentioned, the best preventative tool is an educated public. So our warnings focused this year on social media based scams and impersonations. And I think this will not be news to you. Social media based scams, social media is definitely where scams have moved to. Easy to reach a lot of people. So it's a very effective way of doing business if you're a fraudster. And you would have seen some really good impersonations generated by IA that is so well done that it's certainly a big trap. So we push that message all the time. Unrealistic terms, stay away from that. And we always preach the red flags, and then we always end up by saying speak to a regulated financial services provider. But we go further than that. We've got a very strong consumer education function at the FSCA, and they do a lot of work, especially on grassroots level, with educating our public. We estimate that in the last financial year, we reached more than 67 million people through this. And I sincerely hope and pray that that makes a difference in what is going out there. So we're not alone in what we do. We certainly don't do it in isolation. So I'll quickly talk to you about domestic cooperation and referrals. We work with the other regulators and agencies, closely with them to fight crime and to fight misconduct. And this all culminated into something that has been very valuable. Last year, we had our 3rd annual Financial Crime Symposium. This is a closed symposium, invitation only, where the top police officials, national prosecution, the regulators, etc., get together and try to find solutions for financial crime and working together. And there's been some great work done there, flowing out of that training academy and working together, joint investigations and so forth that I can't go into now, but something that I'm very proud of and that I think really works and really helps. I should maybe mention one case, and that is the BHI Trust case, Mr. Craig Roy Warner. As a result of a joint investigation and collaboration with the Hawks and the prosecution, close collaboration, that case ended up in a total imprisonment term of 25 years. This was unregistered business, should have been registered, but in any event, it ended up being a Ponzi scheme. So we didn't investigate the Ponzi scheme, but we investigate the contravention of a financial sector law, which is unregistered phase business. The total imprisonment of 25 years is good news, because that's the type of deterrence we are looking for. But the real relevance for FSCA and our industry is that 10 years of the 25 years were specifically imposed for conducting unregistered financial services business. So now we have a precedent to say that in the right circumstances, the courts will actually impose that type of imprisonment for unregistered insurance business. And needless to say, that message I will preach whenever I get the option, and I ask you to also relay that message in the industry. But of course, we are not isolated here at the foot of Africa. It's very important that we are able to reach across borders to do investigations and to do enforcement. So we belong to IOSCO, International Organization of Regulators, of financial regulators. And amongst all the other good things that IOSCO does, it also has a multilateral memorandum of understanding that we are signatories to. And then there's about 92 bilateral agreements with other countries. And these agreements, what they basically do, they enable us to ask assistance from other financial regulators across the world. And of course, they put the duty on us to assist them with investigations in South Africa, and we give that preference. We protect our membership to this club very much, because it is a great enabler of proper investigations. As the Commissioner mentioned, this year was also a very good year for us on the IOSCO front, because there's an enhanced multilateral memorandum of understanding that we applied to be signatories to. Took quite some time for the evaluation, but we got the news, I think, in May, that we are now a signatory to the enhanced memorandum of understanding as well, which means our scope of getting assistance is broadened, and there's more to it. I wanted to just spend 2 minutes talking to you about enforcement strategy and case selection. I think you will appreciate, with the hundreds of cases out there, that we cannot investigate every case, as the Commissioner also mentioned. But that doesn't mean that we can just ignore cases. So the instruction to me was quite clear. You must find a controlled and a fair way to deal with case selection. And for that reason, we have created a case selection guideline. And this case selection guideline speaks to the factors that will mean that cases that are selected for full investigation and enforcement, that they have the most impact in the industry. So there's a few examples on screen of the factors that we take into account, and I think that'll make perfect sense to you. The strategic significance, for instance, of addressing an alleged misconduct. You know, post ODP licensing, it was very important to get the message out that if you have not licensed, we are going to come after you, because there's a whole group of ODP licensed entities out there. And in fairness towards them, and of course, for the protection of the public, we're not going to allow you to run unregistered business. That is tapered down, but there's still some investigations left of that. We also look for the potential to send an important enforcement message, and that is informed by the statistics and the things that we see. Impact on financial customers, and of course things like harm to vulnerable financial customers. The FSCA is all about best outcomes for customers, protecting the public. So if there's an entity that focused on vulnerable financial customers, that's a big tick. You can be guaranteed of an investigation and an enforcement for that. Okay, so I'm going to end off with a slide. This is my focus areas and trends. This is also, as I say, informed by what we see in our investigations, in our complaints, in the industry, in our discussions with industry, which is very valuable for me. So starting off with unauthorized crypto-related financial services, that's a no-brainer. We has recently made crypto a financial product, so crypto providers now have to be registered. So we need to make sure that whoever was conducting this business before is now either regulated or have stopped. So I've got a special team and a special project focusing only on that. And I'm always happy to hear from the industry if they come across something that looks suspicious. You don't have to have proof of what you're saying. You just need to give me the information, or my team the information that we can follow up. It is our job to get the proof and to do the investigation. Copy trading, signals and introducing brokers, big issue. Copy trading refers to online trading platforms, ODPs, where there's this function where a master trader can control the accounts of the copy accounts or the slave accounts. That is category 2 discretionary financial services business, and for that you need a license. So there has been some misunderstanding. We're trying to clear that up with our enforcement actions and with the message going out. So I'm asking all the ODP license holders as well to please make sure that if they have that function, the MAM function on their platforms, to please take steps to make sure that they do not enable copy trading on their platforms. That is a focus area, so we will definitely, there'll be more on this as the months go by. We've picked up that solicitations to invest in livestock seems to be popular. So this is where the story goes that livestock is, certain livestock or agricultural products are ring-fenced, and that the investor will then benefit from whatever profits, returns comes from that livestock. The problem with this is that it's a wonderful way to come up with a story to take persons' money. So we look at that, and we have an investigation or two going on that, and we see that being advertised, especially on social media, quite often. So please speak to your client, warn them about this. It is somebody doing that will require a license. So if they're not licensed with the FSCA, that is not permitted. Finfluencers, big issue that we'll be looking in the next few months. Financial advice is something you should get from a regulated financial services provider. It's not something you should get from somebody who's well known for other reasons. We also, of course, are concerned about the lack of oversight by our key individuals in the financial services provider space. So that is something that we take seriously. And if a key individual, I think you're all familiar with the expression rent a KI, if a key individual is only there in name, that is most likely to lead to a debarment. A key individual is an extremely important position in an FSP, and we want all key individuals to see it like that. And I realize there are many key individuals out there that see it like that. We need to address the balance. I've spoken to father. I won't go into that again. Guarantee policies is another issue that I really want everybody to know about, so that they can warn clients about it. And that is a guarantee policy in the construction industry, in the tender environment. If you win a tender, construction for a government or a municipality contract, you're required to put up a guarantee policy. That is a financial product, and you need to be an underwriter to do that. So it is also something that we're focusing on, because we do see it a lot in our investigations. Failure to implement an anti-money laundering program, part of our effort on grey listing. So that's something that we're certainly focusing on. Also have a special team at the FSCA in our conduct of business division that focuses exactly on that. Deepfake scams, I don't think I have to say anything about deepfake scams and impersonations. You've probably all enjoyed those videos, but there's a very sad side to it, because not everybody has access to the information that you have, and they do get caught. I'm going to end off by just saying, if I had to pick a trend, I would say exploitation via social media platforms is certainly where everything is going. So we have a social media monitoring program that we focus on, and of course our warnings focus on that, but that is certainly an area of concern, and that's certainly a message that I would very much like you to get out to your clients. It is a dangerous place to make investment decisions on social media. Best is to walk into the office of a financial services provider who's authorized. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I assume there'll be some questions. I'm going to hand back to Festus now.
All right, that was incredible. Thank you so much, Gerhard. I see there's lots of comments coming in applauding the insights. I think that was certainly insightful and valuable information all around. So don't go too far. Stick around for the Q&A. We'll just now go into the second last part of our session today, with closing remarks from our Deputy Commissioner, Katherine Gibson. And colleagues as well, the rest of the delegates, remember you can access this report on our website, www.fsca.co.za. I see there's also a request for this presentation. It's just a summary of the report. The report itself is not that long, about 33 slides. So I would rather encourage you to look at the report holistically. Otherwise, we can certainly make this presentation available on request, or we will consider posting it as well. Without much further ado, I'd like to welcome the Deputy Commissioner of the FSCA, Ms. Katherine Gibson, to also share her reflections on the enforcement actions report. Over to you, Deputy Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Really welcome you being here with us today. There's a big number of you. Yeah, so I think that this report and indeed this engagement highlights our openness to transparency and accountability. With this report, you can see how we are exercising our powers in a very visible way. As important as this is also an opportunity to share what we have learned to be shaping industry practices. So yes, we are holding wrongdoers to account and will impose penalties and refer to SAPs as needed. But you will see also, and the Commissioner did speak to this, you will see an increasing effort by us to be guiding and building knowledge and understanding of our expectations as the regulator through our supervisory engagements, our regulatory outreach, and thought leadership, as being illustrated additionally through this report on our enforcement and the nature of our investigations. So I really ask that you take what you have heard here today to heart. Are there lessons for your businesses and your business practices, and indeed yourself? I encourage you to proactively think about the impact, and I'm going to speak a bit about impact today, the impact your business has not only on the lives of many South African households and depending on your business model, but also the growth and sustainability of businesses, of other businesses. The financial sector is a critical enabling sector for economic development. And I'm highlighting this because sometimes, we don't see the wood for the trees, but the sector needs to work well. And those of you who are sticking within the guidelines and promoting good practices, you deserve to be rewarded for that. And the flip side is true as well. For those that are not, accountability is critical. So what this means is, I think for each and every one of you, is considering whether your products and services are bringing value and living up to client expectations, in addition to complying with the letter of the law. So again, there is strictly the compliance aspect, but what Gerhard has really illustrated well today are just some of the emerging themes, some of the challenges that we're experiencing within the sector. And we will continue to be seeing new themes and new challenges emerge. And you within the sector will probably see them first. So I think there's always this question of how can you be changing your practices to respond to some of these emerging risks and practices as we see them. Your business environment continues to change rapidly. For example, digitalization, and Gerhard has spoken to some of the examples already of the risks, of the challenges we're seeing. But it does bring opportunities with new technologies like machine learning, AI, blockchain, cloud computing. There's a lot going on. Not to mention what smartphone penetration in itself means for business models and delivery channels. But the question has to be, how will you strive to ensure that your clients are protected where cybersecurity threats, scammers, and other operational resilience risks, the likes, continue to challenge us? And this is we're not, as a regulator, we're not just a policeman. We want to continue having a conversation with the sector to how can we strengthen and professionalize and build resilience for the sector in a way which assists us collectively in putting to bed the scammers, the wrongdoers, and as I said, really promote those that are doing the right thing and making the right decisions. So being proactive, and preemptive does not mean you need to wait for the regulator to tell you what the good practices are. Consider the impact and outcome of your actions. We will, of course, continue to guide. I think that's an important role of the regulator, but you don't need to necessarily wait for us. And I encourage you also to reach out to us if you are unclear about a particular course of action and what may or may not be permitted, what's on the right or wrong side of that fence. And this takes us to the relevance of culture. I have made this point previously, and I will continue to do so. There are very few people who will always do the wrong or will always do the right thing. Most of us sit somewhere in the middle and are swayed by what our peers consider as acceptable, which means that your businesses and colleagues are influenced by how you behave, and vice versa. So please keep this in mind in your everyday roles, your everyday work, no matter where you sit within the organization, no matter what the size of your organization is, whether it's, there's one or two of you, or whether there's 50,000 of you. I think each of us each of us has an impact, and each of you has an impact on your clients, your colleagues, and your business environment. So if you are dealing with retail clients, for example, please make sure that you are familiar with, when we're talking about TCF principles, please make yourself familiar with what those are. Take some time over coffee to consider some small steps that you may be able to take to build your business and your role for positive impact. And the FSCA itself continues to learn and transform. The regulatory actions report, and probably more importantly, even the actions that are highlighted through this report, well illustrate how the FSCA is itself a powerful instrument for sector change in support of consumer protection and fair markets. And I'd really like to take this opportunity to thank the supervisors and the supervisory and the enforcement teams responsible for this. There has been an enormous amount of commitment and hard work and energy. And thank you finally to everybody on this call for making the time. I mean, even just being here today, I think shows your commitment to positive impact. So please use your networks and share everything that you have learned and been shared with you here today. And as I said, our door is open, and we look forward to the ongoing engagement. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner. Colleagues, this brings us to the end of the formal presentations. We'll now be going into the Q&As. Gerhard, if I can also have you back on screen. There's a couple of questions already in the chat group. But yeah, just wanted to thank colleagues as well who've attended. Just to reiterate, I think it's great that you can join us and also be able to understand our efforts as the FSCA to continue to engage. I think it's the first time that we're trying this virtual roadshow instead of in person. Hopefully this also accommodates our colleagues in Cape Town with their weather, so that we get to enjoy Joburg's sunny weather together virtually. So starting out, Gerhard, there's already a question, and I think this is certainly a popular one with regards to, firstly, the penalties, the fines, right? On the one hand, where do they go? there's about just under R1 billion of fines in the slides. Where do they go? And a related question, particularly with the Marcus Jooste case, a colleague has asked who will be paying his fine now that he's late. So I think we can start off there just to warm up properly.
Thank you very much, Festus, and thank you, Deputy Commissioner, for the kind words. We do burn the midnight oil, but it's worth it, and it's nice if it's noticed. Yes, that's a lot of money that we get in through penalties. Of course, we don't always get in. People get sequestrated, companies get liquidated, etc. But when we do get it in, I'm very happy to say that that usually translates into Rolexes for the DE of enforcement. No, I'm joking, of course. There's a very specific structure for these penalties, and that is designed so that we do not have any interest in imposing a penalty, except for the deterrence effect, so that we don't have any conflict of interest when we impose these penalties, when we make these decisions. So these penalties are collected and then transferred to the National Fund. I'm not sure that's the right word, to the National Treasury National Fund. We do, however, reimburse the FSCA for our expenses, for the cost of the investigation. So that means any external costs we had, any internal costs we had, and the idea behind that is, of course, that as far as possible, levy payers shouldn't pay for these cases. So that's how it's dealt with. There is a component of penalties at the FSCA. It's not these penalties that on application may be used for consumer education. So it's a very specific application, and it really is to get the message out there. Thank you, Festus. That's the first one. The penalty of Mr. Jooste. So yes, we are very aware of the fact that he passed away, but our penalties, in terms of executing the penalties, we can apply to the Registrar of the High Court to make them a civil order. And we have done so in the case of the Stein of Jooste penalties. So they now have the standing of a civil order. It's an easy process, and that means that we will execute as if it's a civil judgment. We literally raise an invoice, and we collect the penalties. So in terms of civil law, that penalty then falls onto the estate of a deceased person to be paid, and we have approached the trustees of the estate to inform them that we will be submitting a claim. Thank you, Festus.
All right, thank you for that answer. Speaking of penalties and other interventions, you always emphasize the importance of deterrence and the importance of making timely interventions, especially according to the criteria you mentioned, how we approach cases. So there's a question regarding the effectiveness of our public warnings. Presumably by the time we're issuing a warning, some damage has sort of been done, but it's still a valuable intervention over and above other efforts around consumer education and making sure that the best preventative method really is making sure that consumers are empowered, and protected from these scams. So can you kindly just share your comments on that regarding our public warning efforts and the Wednesday warnings and the various press releases we issue from time to time?
Thank you, Festus. Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that. I should have mentioned it. Yeah, so the public warnings goes out as far as possible. It goes into a general media release. My colleagues in communication, including Festus, they will then place it on social media platforms. We try to extend it to radio stations, etc. So we just try to get that message out as far as possible. And then those messages are repeated with our Warning Wednesdays, where the warnings of the week are repeated. And I also have a fairly standing engagement with Jimmy Maya on the MoneyWeb show, where we talk about the trends. When we talk about every Wednesday, we talk about the warnings as well, and we give some background and some flesh to it for people to understand how unlikely it is that you're going to triple your money in 1 month, etc. So that is a very important part of the business. I must just put this in perspective, though. These are scams. These are not regulated entities and core business of the FSCA. There's scams out there. There's a lot of them, and strictly speaking, they fall on the border of our mandate. But because we see them and because we have the experience, we believe it's a good thing to at least add our voice to the warnings. But as I said before, that doesn't mean every case out there gets a warning from the FSCA. It's more important that the public are educated about the obvious scams, and hopefully they can avoid these harm themselves. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that as well. Yeah, I think certainly from our point of view, the effort of public warnings actually is teamwork, and I think we also depend on the industry as well to play their role. So do look out for our social media handles. You can certainly retweet or repost on your side. And in fact, you can also subscribe to our various newsletters and notices on our website. There's a link there at the bottom for subscriptions so that you can get these notices on a regular basis. I think the effort to protect the integrity of the market, is a collective one. So hopefully a lot of our FSPs here do not contribute a lot to those stats, Gerhard. At least we have some of our best people, in the group. And speaking of which, there's also questions with regards to the insurance or rather funeral policies, rather, in terms of transferring funeral policies to another underwriter. The question from Ansi is whether this is allowed without getting an express mandate from a client or a policy holder. So suddenly you have a policy and then it's shifted to a different underwriter. It might affect things like premiums or other benefits, but it's usually automated. So if you can share your views on that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm certainly not the expert on that, but you are right.
Please try would be to discuss with
the person who asked the question is also right. It is an issue. So the law, phase legislation, say that you must get consent from your client. You can't just move clients around as if you own them. And not only that, there's a whole framework of you as the FSP having to ensure that this is a good move for the client, not a good move for your business, not a good move for the underwriter. It's best interest of the client at all times. Section 2, always act in the best interest of your client. So if you move them for a good reason, but with that comes the responsibility to do a comparative study. In other words, to make sure that you are comparing apples with apples. Having said that, I know my colleagues in policy and other divisions are doing some work on moving, I think, group schemes. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the detail of that. I don't know if there's anybody who would like to add to that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll circle back to that in a minute. Speaking of funeral parlors as well, there's a question from Irfan regarding the sittings of the advisory committee for the subcategory A and funeral parlors. I know it's not exactly an enforcement question as well, but maybe you can give it a shot as always. Otherwise, we can always revert to them. I think the question is they want to read up on the developments implemented by the committee based on, you know, how often they meet. So whenever there's resolutions out there, how can they keep track of those developments?
Now, Festus, I'm not going to do justice to that. So I wonder if we should maybe, you know, undertake to get back to the person who asked the question with a proper reply.
Absolutely. And yes, colleagues, you might also forward any other questions should we run out of time. The email is communications@fsca.co.za. We'll be able to escalate them to the relevant departments because of the collaborative nature of the organization. The enforcement division deals with certain particular matters as we've addressed today, and then others relating to policies and maybe, you know, stats, even consumer education, will be able to get into those. All right. There was one more question. In fact, yeah, it was a comment, I guess, agreeing with the advent of scams out there, especially on social media, how difficult they are to track. But I think, thankfully, with the point you made about international cooperation and how we collaborate in order to expand the jurisdiction to protect, you know, financial consumers who are affected in the country. That we are able to, because, you know, on the digital space, it's difficult to track exactly where the scammer is coming from. They may even be, you know, outside of the country, but luckily, you know, those kind of interventions are able to bring any offenders to book.
Yeah, so Festus, sorry, yeah, if I can just add to that, technology has brought with it wonderful opportunity for scammers. Platform trading, internet trading, being able to operate across borders has brought wonderful opportunities. And yes, it's made our life much more difficult. International cooperation through our OSCO and really making sure that, you know, we keep up to date with the skills we need and resource that we need, I think is very important. And there are some really talented techie people out there that assist us, especially in the crypto space as well. And you will be amazed what they are able to do. And that's just about as much as I can say on that question. Thank you.
All right. You're going to love this next one. There's a request for a quick update on this wat het met Shamax gebeur, Gerhard. There's a request for update with Shamax, and I think also earlier with regarding Constantia Insurance with their liquidation and how it impacted the industry at that point. Can you please comment on those as well? Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to find that question in the chat box. What happened to which one? Which case was that?
Firstly, with Shamax, I'm saying it.
Sorry, I don't recognize the case. Does it maybe have another name? Oh, Shemax. Oh, okay, it's just misspelled. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Yes, Festus, I see it's misspelled. Shemax. Sure. This must be somebody who's been in the industry for a really long time. That really goes back quite some time. Shemax was not a case, and the only reason I know about this is I've been here for 5,000 years. This is really an employer that is a caring employer, so I'm staying. Shemax did not fall within the jurisdiction of what at that stage was the FSB. So The FHB did, however, look, if I remember correctly, at the time, the phase team and the inspector team at FSPs who were licensed by us, who recommended that their clients are placed in the investment. But ShareMax itself was actually more of a Reserve Bank issue or a PA issue. PA didn't exist yet, but it was more of a PA issue because that's where the contraventions took place. What happened to the actual persons that ran the scheme, I don't know. Didn't keep track of that. What I do know is that there are some buildings standing around in Pretoria that is still not finished building. But I'm sorry, that's about as much as I can tell you. As I say, it fell outside our jurisdiction.
All right, thanks for that. Any update regarding the Constantia?
Sorry, I can't help with that because that's actually dealt with by conduct of business. Don't know if there's somebody else that have an update on that.
Okay, fair enough. And then there's a question regarding Telegram platform. I'm sure you're aware of it. I think it's related to the earlier comment about our public warnings, where with most social media platforms, you're able to report a scam and the platform will intervene or block, but Telegram doesn't respond to such reports. I know for the most part, whenever we become aware, we issue a public warning through our press releases and also on social media. Yeah, is there any further insights into that? I mean, how widespread even is it from as a platform that's quite private or dedicated? It's not where you can see. It's almost similar to WhatsApp. Yeah.
Thanks, Festus. Yes, when I said that scams are moving to social media, I would certainly put Telegram at the top of that list. Very popular, and even FSCA staff get those invitations all the time. So that is a problem. But as I say, it's on the fringes of what the FSCA do. So as Festus explained, we do deal with it by warning people. The other thing that is also on my list is, and it won't just be the South African regulator, is the intention to actually engage with these platforms and to speak to them about what they are enabling and how we can work together to avoid some of it. So that is definitely something that's in the near future, and Telegram is most definitely on that list. Thank you, Festus.
Okay, thanks for that, Gerhard. We're almost there. There's two related questions around tokenization, licensing, there about whether it's regulated yet by the FSCA, and what is the criteria to obtain such a license, where crowdfunding principles are also employed, that kind of thing.
Sorry, I couldn't see the question, but I know the FSCA is working on a crowdfunding project. Any activity where you are requesting investments from the public or deposits from the public means you do need a license. And as you know, we are always expanding our jurisdiction to include the developments in the markets. And for instance, crypto is a good example of that. So we have teams working on whatever is coming down the road and how it impacts our regulation and our frameworks.
All right. Yeah, I think we've really done great so far. There's lots of comments of appreciation, Gerhard, and your team for the hard work they put into this report and also the insights that are being shared. Please remember, once again, colleagues, where you can get that report. And also, please do feel free to resend your questions to the comms email address that's shared in the comment. One or two colleagues, Gerhard, want you to attend to them in person, so we will share with them your email address, hopefully, to engage with the organization or make presentations there. We should be able to coordinate that via the comms department. We have about 5 more minutes in the times that we have allocated. So there's one last request, if you can elaborate on unauthorized insurance business in the funeral parlor sector, and whether we provide, as the FSCA, any material related to anti-money laundering and FICA. I'm not sure in terms of material they mean educational. Oh yeah, that's Irfan again. Okay, yeah, maybe let's start with the first one regarding unauthorized insurance businesses. I think we'll certainly make follow-ups with you, because you've been on a roll there with the questions. We'll definitely make sure we can elaborate further through emails, and maybe where necessary publish some of the findings if you think they are of a broader interest to all to the rest of the delegates. So did you get that, Gerhard? Otherwise, the question regarding.
Was that the question regarding the funeral parlors and unregistered insurance? Yeah, that's actually what I refer to here as. So from the enforcement side, we have a drive to regularize that. It depends on the circumstances, of course. Sometimes we take harsher enforcement action when there's a clear pattern of misconduct. But as I mentioned before, there's also a bigger project to address the whole funeral parlor unregistered insurance business. FSCA has already gone a long way in addressing that. So my colleagues in policy and frameworks and conduct of business have worked on a different framework for funeral parlors becoming FSPs. A different framework for that type of underwriting. So the FSCA has gone a long way in enabling that very important part of financial business, so that it is viable. But as far as people conducting unregistered business, of course, that is an enforcement job, and that's why we have the special team that focuses on that.
All right. Well, I think with that, that should. Are you okay there?
Yes, I just saw. There was a question about what measures does the FSCA have in place to combat the renter KI problem that I might have missed. So maybe just quickly, Festus, that
okay.
The message goes out all the time that you must take that job very seriously. And that is a focus point if we do reviews and on-sites, etc. But for enforcement, it is actually most definitely a focus point. So whenever we investigate any case, we always start with a question: where was the KI? What did the KI do? It doesn't mean that the KI is responsible for everything, but you do have such clear-cut cases out there where the KI is completely absent, except when it receives a monthly payment, and that we do not tolerate. That means you're out of the industry, and there's huge penalties involved. So that's definitely the message we're trying to get out there.
Okay, thank you for that, colleagues. I think this brings us to the end of our session today. Thank you so much for making your time and for engaging so meaningfully with this content. We've noted all the other comments in the chat. We should be able to attend to them in the next couple of days. This recording as well should be available on your Teams for as long as you manage to attend. It was a recorded session. But yeah, I want to thank also everyone who participated in making preparations. Thank you to our Commissioner, Unathi Kamlana, for the opening address. Thank you also to Deputy Commissioner Katherine for those reflections at the end, certainly from my comms team as well. Thank you guys for your hard work, as well as ICT. I hope you found this very valuable, and do look